All right, so this article kind of goes back to back with my previous one about the Phoenix coin, or Phoenix, not coin, Phoenix. I've got cryptocurrencies in my mind. Phoenix currency that the 1988 Economist magazine said would be uh, taking place. There, that whole system, one world currency. They just said we'll call it the Phoenix coin for now, or the Phoenix currency for now. And I read the actual article that was inside the magazine. And as I look at where we are right now, 1 year before they said the due date is for this whole implementation, we're there. I mean, they're gearing up for this for sure. But this is going to help push us. What I'm about to read you is going to push us right into it. The one world, the Phoenix currency, the SDR, whatever it is. Because Charles Hugh Smith of the of2minds.com blog has an article titled "The Keynesian Cult Has Failed, and we're now basically at emergency stimulus is now permanent." And if you look over in the Eurozone, that's a fact. I mean, that's done. Yeah, absolutely. We supposedly slow down over here. We stopped QE but okay, you may have stopped QE, but what about the 4.5 trillion on the balance sheet? I know some of that QE was help feed that, but that's like just an account entry on the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. Oh, let's just add that. So this is going to push us right into that kind of system. Can we finally admit that 8 years of following the Keynesian coloring book have not just failed, but failed spectacularly? What do we call a status quo in which emergency measures have become permanent props? A failure. The emergency responses to the global financial meltdown of 2008 and 9 are, 8 years on, permanent fixtures. Everyone knows what would happen if the deficit spending, money printing, zero interest rates, shadow banking, asset purchases by central banks, again, around the world, not just ours, and all the rest of the Keynesian Colts program stopped. The status quo falls apart instantly. So, Keynesianism versus the real world. Let's start by reviewing the core context of the economy. Number one, the dominant socioeconomic structures since around 1500 AD are profit maximizing capital, or the market, in nation states, the government. Two, the dominant economic theory for the past 80 years is Keynesianism, i.e., the notion that the state and central bank must aggressively manage private sector consumption demand and lending via centrally planned and funded fiscal and monetary stimulus during turndowns, recessions/depressions. Simply put, the conventional view holds that there are two and only two solutions for whatever ails the economy: the market, profit maximizing capital, or the government, nation states and their central banks. Proponents of each blame all economic and social ills on the other one. In the real world, the vast majority of Earth's inhabitants, also known as consumers, used to be called citizens, not anymore, operate in economies with both market and state-controlled dynamics in varying degrees. The Keynesian worldview is doggedly simplistic. The economy is based on aggregate demand for more goods or services. People want more stuff and services, and as long as they have the means to buy more stuff and services, they will avidly do so. This urge is known as animal spirits. The greatest single invention of all time in the Keynesian universe is credit, because credit enables people to borrow from their future earnings to consume more in the present. Credit thus expands aggregate demand for more goods and services, which is the whole purpose of existence in this worldview. Buy more stuff. But credit, aggregate demand for more stuff, and animal spirits make for a volatile cocktail. The euphoria of those making scads of profit, lending money to those euphorically buying more stuff with credit, leads to standards of financial prudence being loosened. In effect, lenders and borrowers start seeing opportunities for profit and more consumption through the distorted lens of vodka goggles. Lenders reckon that even marginal borrowers will earn more in the future and therefore are good credit risks. And borrowers reckon they'll make more in the future, i.e. the house they just bought to flip will greatly increase their wealth. And so borrowing enormous sums is really an excellent idea. Why not make more money / enjoy life more now? But the real world isn't actually changed by vodka goggles, and so marginal borrowers default on the loans they should never have been issued, and lenders start losing scads of money as the value of the collateral supporting the defaulted loans, such as used cars, swampland, McMansions, etc., falls. But the real world isn't actually changed. Oh, whoa. Just read that. Just read it. Slow down, J-Snip. Oh dear, the hangover of credit expansion is brutal. As lenders go bankrupt, wiping out their owners, and borrowers go bankrupt as they are unable to make their payments or sell the collateral to pay off the loan, just as credit expansion feeds on itself, everybody's making a fortune buying and flipping houses. Let's go buy a house or two on credit. The hangover is also self-reinforcing. The value of collateral falling pushes more marginal borrowers into insolvency, and the lenders who made the loans are pushed into insolvency as defaults increase and collateral melts like ice in Death Valley. This guy is fantastic, okay? Charles Hugh Smith, you are the man. You are putting this together phenomenally. I love this. Perfect analogies. He's not making stuff. This is spot on. In the Keynesian universe, this self-reinforcing contraction of imprudent credit and widespread losses of speculative wealth are bad things. Very bad things. Important, powerful people tend to own issuers of credit, banks, and losses are not something they signed up for. If all the little people stop borrowing more money, the powerful owners of the credit issuing machines, the banks, can no longer reap enormous profits from issuing more credit. And that's a very bad thing. As a nasty side effect of the credit hangover, businesses that depended on people borrowing more money to buy more stuff also shrinks. And this contraction is also self-reinforcing. As sales decline, businesses must cut costs to stay solvent, which means laying off employees, abandoning underutilized offices, closing factories, etc. Did I mention for about the fourth time now, Ford is laying off 20,000 employees? That sound like it fits into what's happening here? And as you know, Ford's not even close to being the only one. The euphoria of credit expansion turns it to painful contraction. Nobody's happy in the hangover phase, and people naturally cry out, "Somebody do something to stop the pain." The Keynesian answer is simple. The government should borrow and spend lots of money to replace all the money that the private sector is no longer borrowing and spending, and the central bank should lower interest rates and create a lot of new money that private banks can borrow cheaply to loan out to private sector businesses and consumers. In the simplistic Keynesian universe, the credit contraction is like a temporary drought. All the government and central bank have to do to fix the drought is release a flood of new money onto the parched landscape of the credit-starved private sector, and aggregate demand and new loans will blossom like spring flowers. Hooray for central banks, for central states and banks, given the power to borrow or create out of thin air as much money as they need to flood the private sector with fresh money and credit. The drought ends, animal spirits are revived, people get to buy more stuff by promising to give their future earnings to banks, and powerful owners of banks are once again earning great gobs of cash from lending to the little people, i.e. borrowers in danger of becoming debt serfs whose earnings go largely to service their debts. In the crayon coloring book of Keynesian ideology, this is the way the universe works. The problem is always a temporary drought of aggregate demand caused by a temporary drought of private sector credit, and the solution is always a state central bank issued flood of money and credit. The government borrows and spends more money to replace declining private spending, and central banks make it cheaper and easier for private banks to issue new loans to enterprises and little people. That this coloring book ideology no longer describes the problem or solution is incomprehensible to the Keynesians. That neither the market nor the government can solve the current set of problems is equally incomprehensible, not just to Keynesians, but to everyone who unthinkingly accepted that the market and or the state can always fix whatever problems arise. Oops, the flood of money and credit did not fix the economy. The post-credit/asset bubble crashes in 2000 and 2008, and the state/central bank responses, fiscal and monetary stimulus, aka flood the land with borrowed money, seem to confirm the Keynesian worldview. Marginal borrowers, lenders, and collateral all went south, and the stimulus restored animal spirits, which promptly inflated a new credit and asset bubble. Once again, this year only, forget all my videos, just this year only. How many have I come out here and showed you? Defaults all-time high, bankruptcies coming back again, subprime borrowers again, problem with auto loans, subprime housing, everything. Subprime problem. What does subprime mean? Subprime means you have a credit score below where you should be able to get any freaking loan ever. That's okay, we'll take you in. We've got to make money. We have to borrow money cheap from the central bank, and we need to re-lend it back out to this schmuck sheeple. And they can't afford it. They're in debt up to their eyeballs. That's okay. We now have a new program called 70-month loans on a car. That's not good enough. No problem. We will give you an 80-month loan. We must issue credit. Credit is essentially the, musical chairs, and the music stops. Who's standing? Who didn't have a chair? That's what happens when the credit's turned off. That's what happens when all these people are defaulting. We don't have hardly anyone to lend to. We need to borrow more money and take bigger risks on super duper subprime people, because we are hoping that at least some of these people will be able to pay this back, only to find out wrong. Hardly any of them are. We're in deep trouble. And as I did the video, 2 days ago? 92% of auto loans, subprime auto loans that were given to whatever bank or whatever that company was, that's responsible for most of the subprime auto loans, by the way, was found out they didn't do any kind of due diligence whatsoever. We didn't check for if you had a job, if you had income. We just passed this along. Yep, you're approved. Here you go. I'm so sure this is going to end very well. This is going to end fantastically. They'll just print more money. They'll fix the problems again. Sure they will. But this time around, the drought never ended, no matter how much money was poured into the economy, and the earnings of borrowers stagnated or declined. Recall that debt is borrowed from future earnings. If earnings decline, it becomes much more difficult to service existing debt, much less borrow more. Very good point. Federal debt has more than doubled since just 2009 and tripled since 2001, as the government flooded the land with fiscal stimulus. Central banks have flooded the global economy with trillions of dollars, euros, yen, and won, and continue to do so to the tune of $200 billion right now a month. Does that sound temporary to you? Central banks have dumped over $1 trillion in new monetary stimulus in the first 4 months of 2017. 8 years after the emergency stimulus began. Isn't that amazing? Meanwhile, wages are stagnant or declining for the vast majority of wage earners, even the highly educated. And if you want to see this chart, which you may, let's take a look at it. Even the most educated workers have declining wages. 2007, 2014, the red line is an advanced degree. 2007 over here, 2014 over here. As you can see, it's gone nowhere. It has gone nowhere even for those with an advanced degree. Those that have a college degree, not an advanced one, just college degree, it's gone down. Some college, definitely gone down. High school, also down. Less than high school, down. So everybody's down. And of course, as I said, this is to 2014. I don't know what it looks like right now. But someone that has an advanced degree, you've gone nowhere. Your wages have gone nowhere. Come on. What is this? Kind of fun house? Are you having fun? Well, wait a minute. No, I got that wrong. What is this? Some kind of fun house, Wonka? Why are you having fun? What is this? Some kind of Keynesian point of view? Why are you a Keynesian? Yes, I am. Household income has fallen across the board. Top 5 household segment, top 5%, down 6.1%. Top quintile, down 5%. Second quintile, down 6.3%. Middle quintile, down 9.1%. Fourth quintile, down 12.2%. Bottom quintile, down 15.9%. Peak year, 1999. That was for the last one. And the peak year for the top 5% was 2006. Peak income. Wow. Stagnation incomes is not a new measure for the bottom 90%. It's a structural reality going back 4 decades, as he shows in the chart. Clearly, fiscal and monetary stimulus policies that were supposed to be temporary are now permanent. This isn't what was supposed to happen. Earnings were supposed to rise once private sector credit and consumption returned to expansion. As we see here, bank credit and consumer credit have surged higher, but the incomes of the bottom 90% have gone nowhere. And this is all based on chart data, some of it from the Federal Reserve. Okay? So when they come out and give you this nonsense, and the jobless numbers look really good today, this quarter, they came out and just created more jobs, and unemployment's down 4.4%. Right. In the U.S., income disparity grew after 1980. Inflation-adjusted income flat since 1998. Meanwhile, total debt, government, corporate, and household has skyrocketed higher, more than doubling from 280% of GDP in the year 2000 to 584% of GDP in 2016. As if these weren't bad enough, wealth and income inequality have soared during the era of permanent fiscal monetary stimulus. So how is that possible? How could we have income inequality to such a massive degree during a time period where they're printing and fixing everything, printing all this money and fixing it all? It doesn't make sense, does it? Next chart he has, the rich get richer. Gap between top and bottom wage earners continues to widen. In case you want to see that, I'll pull that up. Here we go. From 1979 all the way to 2015. No, what is that? This one doesn't actually say. It looks like about 2015. And again, it's just further away. In sum, nothing has worked, and the Keynesians as they expected. Instead, state and central bank measures that were supposed to be temporary are now permanent, and the expansion of private sector debt has failed to trickle down to earnings. The Keynesian solution, borrowing from future earnings to bring consumption forward, has expanded consumption at the cost of enormous increases in debt throughout the economy, which has exacerbated income, wealth inequality, and declining real incomes. Can we finally admit that 8 years of following the Keynesian coloring book plan have not just failed, but failed spectacularly? And not just failed spectacularly, but made the economy even more vulnerable and fragile, as more and more future income must be devoted to service the skyrocketing debts. Isn't it obvious that there are deeply structural problems in the economy that inflating yet another credit asset bubble won't fix? Clearly, real-world economy does not function like the simplistic Keynesian coloring book model. What comes next? Contraction. Given the extraordinary failure of both Keynesian stimulus and private sector credit growth to create a self-sustaining cycle of expansion whose benefits flow to the entire workforce rather than the top few percent, what can we expect going forward? Can we just keep doubling and tripling the economy's debt load every few years? What if household incomes continue declining? Are the trends sustainable? In part 2, Prepare for the Great Global Contraction, we detail why the economy's structural problems languished unaddressed and how the inflating of yet another speculative credit asset bubble has not fixed these problems. Instead, the current credit asset bubble has dramatically increased the fragility of the economy by diverting capital from potentially productive investments to unproductive speculative gambles, and by increasing the unproductive burdens of soaring debt. When the great reflation does finally roll over, there will be plenty of time to ponder what investments might do well, but those who exit well before the rollover will have the cash to take advantage of the opportunities. And I want to see what is this? I want to see what that other one looks like. You may have to subscribe to this peakprosperity.com, which is some site he must have to get that part 2 thing. But nonetheless, I'm going to link, like I always do, in case you do want to go down that path and see what part 2 has to say. Again, this is what's going to push the new world currency, IMF, new central bank of the world. Because the Keynesians can't fix this. They know they can't, but it's all they got. They don't want to change anything, and they're going to ride us right off a cliff. They're going to drive us right off a cliff. And like I said, you will be begging. We will be begging them for a solution. Fix this. This is painful. Okay. One world currency. Here we come. Take care.